Hello. Today's video, the final one before the exam, is going to focus on Sheila Birling. I'm going to plan an exam response to a question on Sheila. Now, I just want to make this very clear. I'm not doing this because I think Sheila is going to pop up on tomorrow's exam paper. I genuinely have no idea what questions will arise. I don't have a crystal ball. My mother's not the examiner. I don't know. This is not to sneer at people who ask me what's going to come up on the paper. I get it. You want any edge, any support or clue that will help you on the day. So I'm not sneering and denigrating people who ask me, but my response is, I don't know. I'm doing a Sheila response because people have asked me to. So let's have a look at this horror. What methods does Priestley use to show how and why Sheila changes in an inspector course? Now, this is the most awkward question I could find on Sheila. If you're very lucky, a Sheila question in the exam might simply say, how does Priestley present Sheila in an inspector course? But as you know, sometimes the wording can be that little bit more awkward, the task that little bit more specific. This is a classic example then of that kind of awkward exam question. So, we've had a look at this horror, had a look at the question. Now it's time to take the teeth out of that monster and make it easier for us to understand what it is the examiner is asking of us. I've highlighted the key words. You know that's my process. What methods does Priestley use to show how and why Sheila changes in an inspector course? Well, as you can see from my luminous green paint, I've locked in the words what methods, show, how and why, and Sheila changes. Those are the core features of that question. What methods simply refers to language techniques, structural techniques, dialogue, stage directions. What are the ways that Priestley presents Sheila? Presents, I've used the word show here, but it basically means presents, it basically means explores, it basically means conveys. How and why Sheila changes, that's the core of our question, isn't it? In what ways does Sheila change? How does she change? So we need to think about what she was like before and what she's like after, and why Sheila changes. What's the, spiffy star word coming up here, what's the catalyst for that change? What forces her or compels her to change her ways? Here's a picture of my plan. It's at this point, isn't it, that I always waggle my finger at you students and say, make sure you do a plan. Because if you don't do a plan, you are snookered. You are severely compromising the quality of response that you're going to produce. Marshal your thoughts, get some ideas down on paper, some rough bullet points, a few rough lines, and that will make the writing process so much more fluent and efficient. Hopefully with clever use of the zoom lens on your screen, you'll be able to go into close-ups of this plan. But I've also provided some close-ups later on in the video. Just like this one. This section is looking at what Sheila's like at the start of the play, at the beginning, what she's like initially. And we're saying she's very materialistic, and I've got a quote to support that, and then I develop that point. I talked before about stretching the arrow, just developing my points to ensure I'm going into the deep detail that is the watermark, the index, the measure of an A-star piece. And I'm also going to talk about how her behaviour can be seen as sinful. She commits the sin of jealousy, the biblical sin of jealousy towards Eva, and that compels her to get her sacked. And what Priestley is trying to show about the bourgeoisie, the ruling tier, by having people like Sheila commit these sins. And we are mere seconds away from Mr. Taylor delving deep into that puddle of grey sludge. He has the gall to call brain and pulling out a sweet nugget of A-star goodness. And here we are. In Act 1, Priestley presents Sheila as a highly materialistic character. Holding up Gerald's engagement ring, she declares, "Now I really feel engaged." This suggests Sheila needs a valuable jewel to validate her relationship with Gerald. Clearly, it is not enough to be loved. Such feelings must come with displays of wealth. Here, Priestley attacks the greed, the mercenary values that characterise the ruling class, a tier of society Sheila represents. So that's my paragraph response. I haven't included one on sin. Perhaps you can do that at your leisure. A bit of last minute practice. But let's just lock in on this paragraph now and consider why it is so good. Well, I've got keywords from the question in the first line. Sheila, and by referring to her initially in Act 1 as being a highly materialistic character, that's responding to the question which was asking how has she changed. I'm showing what she's like before. I've embedded my evidence I haven't just said, now I really feel engaged, I've put it into my sentence. Holding up Gerald's engagement ring, she declares, now I really feel engaged. I've said this before, it's a small thing, it just creates a sense of flow in your work that the examiner appreciates. This suggests, it's a little bit like this implies, this highlights, this emphasises, this conveys the sense that these are nice ways to launch into your explanation. Sheila needs a valuable jewel to validate her relationship. I do like that high-level word, validate. And I've also developed that idea that, it's not enough to be loved. She needs wealth to kind of shore up those emotions. So I've analysed language very well there. The second thing I've done later on in that paragraph is I've looked at Priestley's themes or messages and how Sheila's behaviour here helps to telegraph or highlight those messages. If you recall from the mark screen criteria, you're going to get the A stars if A, you're answering the question, B, you're locking in on language and analysing the effects of that, and C, you're considering Priestley's themes, the ideas, the messages he's trying to put across to his audience. So I think if you look at this paragraph, you'll see I'm ticking all those boxes. Here's the plan for my second point. This is showing the change in Sheila's character, what she's like after her conversion to socialism, as it were. And I've got a quote there. These girls aren't cheap labour, they're people. And I'm showing how that quote depicts Sheila as changing to a more socialist value system. And you can see I've stretched the arrow. There's a lot of language analysis going on there, and I'm also making sure I'm locking in and referring to Priestley's themes as well. And so, whilst you're goggling in awe at my artistic greatness, I will prepare the A-star paragraph. Et voila. Once I've read this paragraph, you can think about at your leisure how this paragraph satisfies the criteria for the highest grades at GCSE. However, her transition towards more socialist values can be seen in her comments on the factory workers later in Act 1. She asserts that these girls aren't cheap labour, they're people. This implies a concern for the plight of the poor, since she refuses to see the workers simply in terms of economic units, cheap labour. Sheila then refuses to dehumanise the proletariat, seeing the workers instead as human beings with hopes, fears and vulnerabilities. This serves to highlight the text's socialist message of prioritising the needs of the community over individual self-interest. Here's my final planned point. I've not written a paragraph for this. This perhaps you can do to fine-tune your paragraph writing skills. This is thinking about why Sheila changes. Do you remember that was part of the exam question? And I'm thinking about how the inspector here shocks Sheila into socialism. He throws in all these eye-wateringly disgusting descriptions of Eva Smith's burnt-out corpse. And this acts as a catalyst. This acts to change Sheila's ways. It forces her to see that her selfish behaviour, her kind of infantile, spiteful acts can have horrific consequences. And on the right there, I've just got some high-level lexis that high-level words that I was intending to weave into my essay, and the key that shows the red blobs refer to where I've looked at Priestley's themes and messages, and the blue blobs look at where I've analysed language. A conclusion. Debate rages as to whether there's any actual point banging in a conclusion, given that really the examiner is analysing and judging you on the basis of your ideas about the play. But I always think it's kind of polite and kind of appropriately formal if you can bookend your essay with a kind of one-line introduction and a conclusion. And this is my conclusion. You don't have to put a conclusion in. If you wish to, for the sake of neatness and formality, you could do something like this. You're simply summarising the points in as short space of time as possible. So, in conclusion, Sheila changes over the course of the play due to the horrific imagery Gould employs. This forces her to realise the shocking consequences of her capitalist self-interested existence. She transforms from being childish, spiteful and materialistic into a more socially aware character who articulates socialist values. In fact, if I wanted to suck some of the fat out of this conclusion and save my wrist and my biro, I might try and shoehorn my conclusion into 2 or 3 lines like this. In conclusion, Sheila changes from being a selfish materialistic character to a more socially aware character. She does this owing to the gruesome imagery Gould employs. Sheila ultimately becomes a socialist presenting Priestley's values. Your rule of thumb then for writing a conclusion, if you're going to write one, is keep it short and sweet. Avoid big, meaty paragraphs. There's no need to do anything so demanding. And here we are, folks, at the end of another guided tour down the backwaters and byways of J.B. Priestley's masterpiece. It only remains for me to wish you the very best of luck in the exam. Given the comments that you've left on my YouTube pages, I'm very much convinced of the intelligence, the passion, the hunger that you're going to bring to bear on the exam paper. Knock 'em dead, folks. I know you can do this.